When the information was presented to us that Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, would be investing something like $10 billion into black women over the next decade or so, and $100 million into philanthropic endeavors concerning black women, many of us did not ask the requisite positive and important questions, which is, why would Goldman Sachs do this? We understood why black women would be giddy and happy and way more than receiving of these, air quotes, gifts from Goldman Sachs. But why would Goldman Sachs do this? So I'm going to play a couple of clips, and we're going to speak about Goldman Sachs on the back end of this. So y'all hold on, listen to some of these clips, and I'll pause right here.
Now, anytime someone says Goldman Sachs, you know something bad happened.
What may be the biggest financial scam in history.
Two former Goldman Sachs bankers and a fugitive Malaysian financier have been charged over the alleged plunder of billions of dollars from Malaysia's State Development Fund.
Malaysia prosecutors filed criminal charges against the bank and two former employees, saying they committed, quote, gross violations of the country's securities laws.
The Malaysian government has accused Goldman Sachs of helping a fund steal billions of dollars from the country. Now, Goldman has denied any wrongdoing, but in the U.S., the bank is under criminal investigation as we speak, and the Justice Department reportedly wants any settlement to include a guilty plea. That would be unprecedented. Just so you know, Goldman Sachs has never once pled guilty in 150 years, which is shocking when you look at all the shady shit they've been accused of: price manipulation, insider trading, gender discrimination, securities fraud, and those are just the names of their conference rooms. Goldman Sachs, they didn't even face charges in '08.
Wall Street powerhouse Goldman Sachs accused of fraud,
knowingly and willfully cheating clients.
Top executives boasting about the profits they made during the housing crisis.
Goldman executives held their ground. Regret to me means something that you feel like you did wrong, and I don't have that.
Let's be real. Black women are being positioned as the mammies of empire. Straight up.
A lot of people know about the PayPal mafia, how the early team at PayPal went on to found and control some of the biggest tech companies today. But did you know there is a much more powerful, influential business mafia out there? One stemming from a much more shady company than PayPal, who assumed much higher positions of power all over the world. It's called the Goldman Sachs Mafia. This is Henry Paulson. Henry was a very powerful man. He was the former US Secretary of the Treasury, which meant he controlled pretty much every aspect of the federal government's finances. And during the 2008 financial crisis, he was pretty much the person in charge of the entire bailout. He had the pleasure of choosing who to keep afloat and who to let drown in their own debt. He was the guy who essentially let Lehman Brothers implode, and the guy who made sure AIG, the insurance company, got enough money in their bailout to pay Goldman Sachs $13 billion. His pedigree? He spent 32 years at Goldman Sachs. And from 1999 to 2006, he was both its chairman and CEO. Then there's Robert Rubin, Bill Clinton's former Treasury Secretary, who oversaw the loosening of underwriting regulations that had been in place since the 30s. This made it just so much easier for investment banks to bend the rules when it comes to taking companies public. His pedigree? 26 years at Goldman Sachs, even becoming the co-chairman in 1990. The former heads of the Canadian and Italian national banks, former Goldman Sachs employees. Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary under Donald Trump, served 16 years at Goldman Sachs. Robert Zoellick, former president of the World Bank, was a managing director at Goldman Sachs. Joshua Bolten, George Bush's chief of staff, served as an executive director at Goldman Sachs for 5 years. Duncan Niederauer, former CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, was also a partner at, let's say it together, Goldman Sachs. The European Central Bank, the National Bank of Greece, the Bank of England, all have employees with deep roots at Goldman. In total, more than 26 former Goldman Sachs employees have taken positions of incredible power and influence all over the world. The world seems to be almost ruled by the alumni of what is generally thought of as the most slimy, the most corrupt investment bank in the world. But how did it get to this point? This is the Goldman Sachs Mafia.
Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs.
The loans that were blamed for the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression
was hit today with a record fine of $550 million.
Goldman Sachs, which had a controversial role in the global financial meltdown.
One of the giants at the center of that bailout, his former employer, toxic and destructive.
Those bribes in turn resulted in $2.7 billion in losses to 1MDB.
Let's be real. Black women are being positioned as the mammies of empire. Straight up.
Through the years, Goldman Sachs has been accused of dozens of different crimes or violations. There's literally an entire Wikipedia page just titled Goldman Sachs Controversies, if you want to go down that rabbit hole. Kickback brass, insider trading, intentionally undervaluing IPOs, and putting their own interests in front of their clients. That's just some of what Goldman Sachs has been accused of over the years. And it eventually got so bad that the vice president of one of Goldman Sachs' departments, a guy named Greg Smith, wrote a public letter of resignation. Now, I don't know if Greg Smith had anything to gain with resigning publicly and going on a bunch of interviews, but he does give us a rare glimpse into the behemoth.
When people leave Goldman, they tend to do it quietly. Greg Smith is talking for the first time about what led him to leave the firm and to do it in such a public way. It makes me ill how callously people talk about ripping their clients off.
Goldman Sachs and other firms on Wall Street started learning how to use the information they were getting from their clients in order to bet with their own money, at times betting against their clients. The quickest way to make money on Wall Street is to take the most sophisticated product and try to sell it to the least sophisticated client. In Europe, a muppet is a term for someone you can manipulate, someone who is an idiot.
Wall Street isn't exactly known for taking the moral high road when it comes to profits, but Goldman Sachs has proven to be the best at taking this to an extreme.
Wall Street ethics is a sort of oxymoron. People who work at Goldman Sachs don't talk about working at Goldman Sachs.
It's like Fight Club?
It is a little bit, or maybe like the mafia, that people are reluctant to talk about what's happened there.
You are betting against the very product you are selling, and you're just not.
Let's be real. Black women are being positioned as the mammies of empire. Straight up.
Taking the most sophisticated product and selling it to the least sophisticated client, betting against their own clients, and like Hassan said earlier, right? You know it's bad whenever Goldman Sachs is mentioned, right? Whenever Goldman Sachs is mentioned, you know it's bad. Let's also not forget, Goldman Sachs has an employment of black people of 2.7%, right? Now, there are about 12.5% of the U.S. population is black. And Goldman Sachs only has about 2.7, so 2.5% of its employees are black. So Goldman Sachs is on some sneak stuff with how they're about to use black women, right? And if black women are okay with that, then let it be known so that if and when this falls apart, when this house of cards falls apart, we understand what really happened and how this was doomed to fail from the beginning, right? Selling the most sophisticated products to the least sophisticated client. Essentially finding the most gullible people humanly possible that might have some money and then selling them the worst products, financial products, right? And then you bet against them on top of that. Be careful about who y'all in bed with, black women. So we'll pause right here. We'll get into the rest of the commentary, the main point right here. All right.
Let's be real. Black women are being positioned as the mammies of empire. Straight up.
Okay, so let's get right into it. It's going to be really difficult to call Goldman Sachs the racist that they are now that they're going to try to use black women as a PR tool, right? As a public relations tool. Remember what we see that they've been accused of, right? Destroying economies, price manipulation, gender discrimination, insider trading, lying to investors, right? Fraud. And it's going to be really difficult to call them the sexist, racist, homophobic, classist, maniacal, insidious investment bank that they are, right? It's going to be real difficult to have that conversation when all they're going to do is point and be like, look, we've invested $10 billion into black women. We couldn't possibly be, sexist and racist and classist, right? How can we be that? We're a bunch of middle-aged and old rich white men, and we decided to invest, our altruism made us invest $10 billion into these marginalized, largely poor and working class black women, right? How can you call them racist? How can you call them classist? How can you call them sexist? Right? So these people are going to other countries, developing countries, third world countries, playing with the financial ministers' minds, destroying the economy, and then running off back to the US with the money. And then now they're going to try to use black women as public relations. Right? And this is directed towards black men specifically. We understand how the government helped to destroy the black community, especially coming out of the 60s and the 70s, right? Welfare reform and whatnot. But now that we're living through neoliberalism, it's not going to be the government. The government still has a role to play. It's going to be the private industry. That's why you see Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley banking on single women spending so much money. Right? Now there's a profit motive to pushing women to be single, to spend money on themselves. Now, are those women going to be miserable? Probably. Does the baking industry care? Of course not. Right? So, black women have a lot of choices on their plate. This is probably going to look really ugly in 30, 40 years. But Goldman Sachs is investing $10 billion into black women in the next decade, within the next decade, and $100 million in just philanthropic endeavors. Now, if they're attempting to invest into 1 million black women, that's less than 1 out of 20 black women, because there's something like 22-ish million black women, 21, 22 million black women in the country. Something like that, right? So, how is this going to look? How is it going to look when the masses of black women are still poor and working class and struggling, but then they're told to live vicariously through and it won't be 1 million, the 250,000 or so black women that are living it up, either married or not married, with a white man or not, single, childless, with children, it doesn't matter. Supposedly successful black women that have it all together. This is a twofer for Goldman Sachs. They get to obscure and hide all of their financial crimes and wrongdoings under black women, essentially. And them and everyone else, all the elites, get to tell the average black person, black woman specifically, to live vicariously through whatever successful black woman is going to come through this investment. Black women have a lot of decisions to make. This is how the devil plays the game. This is Wesley Snipes in New Jack City, right? You sell drugs, you have kids pushing drugs, you're selling drugs to kids, you're selling drugs to anyone, but then you come through during Thanksgiving or Christmas and hand out turkeys. The turkey is handing out turkeys is positive public relations. Goldman Sachs is Wesley Snipes in New Jack City. Handing out the turkeys is investing $10 billion into black women. Watching the hood get destroyed, well, that's just doing business. And that's the black community, and quite frankly, maybe even the larger society, definitely the planet. Right? This is some sick, maniacal, insidious stuff that these people are engaging in. So, black men, you all you got, right? And I think I'll just pause right there. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. But this is what we are facing. The worst men on the planet have decided that they know who they're going to invest in so they can obscure their financial crimes and how maniacal they are and maybe how even evil they are. And they're going to use black women as the shield to do it. All right, y'all. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. I'll truly pause right there. Mr. Z out.